At Trimble, we care about connection. Connecting technology, connecting solutions, connecting you. We're developing an ecosystem for transportation professionals that improves every facet of moving freight. Whether you need to improve safety, efficiency, or compliance, Trimble has you covered with telematics and fleet management, route optimization, asset maintenance, and transportation management. Wherever you're headed, your journey starts with Trimble.
Welcome to Loaded and Rolling Live. I'm Thomas Wasson. The topic for today is going to be AI-powered fleet solutions. There's been a lot of talk with truck technologies, but one of the big things for fleets, especially in this challenging environment, is going to be how to do more with less and how to make technology help you out. And so one of the fun things we're going to be having on is some folks who are working on that, the folks at Hoptek, and they're going to be talking about what they did for one company called Xtreme Trucking and how this software solution was able to help out their operations, talking about stuff like reducing your wait times, talking about improving asset utilization, and we're going to be having on 3 guests today, so we get to bring on the 4 box. That's right. Take that, cable news. We're going to be kicking it up a notch. Before we bring them on, we're going to be having on Balaji Guntur. He's the co-founder and chief executive officer at Hoptek. It's a Kearney company. We're going to have Sean Maharaj. He's a chief commercial officer at Hoptek. And then Travis Nelson is going to be joining us, president and founder of Xtreme Trucking.
Balaji Guntur, co-founder and CEO of Hoptek. Hoptek is a technology venture from Kearney, and AT Kearney has been driving a lot of technology in the carrier and the shipper space for years now. And Tom, I think you have worked with some very old version of the technology from many years ago, maybe in your past life. And this is really an iteration of that technology, and we've grown a lot since then. So what Hoptek is bringing to the market is an end-to-end fleet planning solution. So we're basically helping trucking companies to get a handle on their dispatch operations, all the way from tracking how their current network is moving, looking at exceptions in the network, planning all the loads that need to be planned so that you're maximizing the utilization of the fleet, making the drivers are happy and the customers are satisfied. And at the same time, looking forward into the future and determining what is the kind of supply-demand imbalance in your network and what sort of loads you need to put into place. So this is really an end-to-end solution. We also, as part of this thing, have a freight finder solution, which is basically looking at plugging gaps in your network with loads from 3PLs and shipper boards all put together. So a lot of capability, a lot of digitally enabled solutions that we think is helping companies get a handle on their operations and really move to the next level of operations and scale their business.
And I think that kind of ties into the state of the industry. The state of the trucking industry is one of the big things that's impacting this push for technology. You know, there's a very real reason since 2022. You're not getting more from the rate, but your wages are going up. Let's see if we got Sean on here. Sean, talk about how, let's put this in the context of the market here. You know, one of the challenges is maintaining this industry that still hasn't found an upswing. Tell us about some of the data. What's going on in the industry? Are there any signs for optimism?
Yeah, I think can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through now.
Yeah.
We got you. We'll
Great.
Make sure that we cut it in the front, and then we'll extend it out a little bit so we get all this stuff in, and we'll be good.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for the opportunity here. Yeah, I think this market has been, it's an understatement to say that it's been unforgiving. I think what we're talking about here is probably 27 months of, essentially turbulence in the marketplace, which probably break the record compared to some of the other times we've seen, some volatility. If we look at rates, you're looking at 0.2% relative year on year, a little bit of an uptick. I think we're still looking at, some volatility that continues forward, but nobody's celebrating by any stretch of the imagination yet. But there are some small signs of some positivity, and we just need to get through one full quarter of positive signals. And I think probably everybody really breathe a sigh of relief.
And follow on that, is there anything from conversations, from positive signals, as we're trying to read the tea leaves? I've heard that, a lot of folks are punting the ball 2025, depends on your Q3 earnings calls. Is there anything that folks should probably pay most attention to when we're looking for what these green shoots may be?
I think probably, I think we're all unanimous in our perspective in terms of looking at the election, in terms of where that ends up, in terms of generating some positivity in the marketplace. I think, we're going to wait to see how the rest of this busy season holds out from a retail perspective and how that looks. And then obviously interest rates are a big factor that play a role in terms of where the market goes and how people, lay down expenditures, and especially on the trucking side and where they lay their investments. For us right now, we're seeing a lot of interest and a lot of traction in terms of having conversations, which really tells us people are having a probably a different mindset and looking down the road and what the future may hold.
And talking about the impacts of that, especially makes it harder for folks who are operating fleets. And let's kick it over to Travis as well. Tell us some of the challenges, especially that you're dealing with in terms of improving your operational efficiency, trying to do more with less. For folks who are not as familiar, what are some of these key metrics that you're trying to work on when you can't always get the wins on the spot or maybe an upcoming RFP? I think you may be muted. See if you can unmute yourself, and we'll see if that works. Let's give it a go and see if that gives it a go.
I think it goes back to what you both have said early on, as we've been in a downturn for 27 months now, and technology really has started to play a major role in this industry in the last 3 years. In the past, it was talked about. I know some other industries still make fun of us that we're on EDI, or there may be a couple customers that fax or still email, and under other industries you have seen that go by the wayside. So since 2021, we're seeing a lot of industry technology enter our marketplace. And I was on a panel a month or so ago, and I think one of the hardest decisions now is, what do you choose? Because you can have too much technology and half of it sits on the shelf and it's not as useful. So what we're always looking for is we're measuring miles per truck, miles per driver, revenue per total truck, revenue per active truck, to see how efficient we're being in the marketplace.
And I want to do a follow on that, because those are some near and dear parts: revenue per truck per week, net rev, revenue miles. Looking at deadhead percentages, I remember between 10 and 15 used to be kind of the old remainder, but as the market is getting a little bit rough, is that one of the challenges, is trying to keep that? I've heard some say upwards of 20% for some fleets. Is deadhead one of the factors of reducing that wasted miles that you're trying to have technology solve for you?
Yeah, 100%. We can see your rate per mile erode pretty quick when you factor in 15, 16, a 20% deadhead on a more localized or regional fleet. But as far as over the road, longer distance lanes that are going 600 plus miles per order, typically you want to be in that 10 to 12% range, but it's not always realistic. We've pushed 15, 16% over the past 2 years. And in the past month and a half, we're seeing that trend back down with utilizing some of the technologies we're putting in place, and just how do we look at it at a different angle instead of always hopping to that next order that could be 16, 17, 18%.
And let's look into the impacts as well, because lower miles, lower paychecks for drivers, turnover becomes a big challenge. I've seen it a few times. We used to have a joke. We had a metric that would take like 2 or 3 bad weeks for either a carrier or even a driver in your fleet before they're looking for something else. And so let's go to Balaji real quick. Talking a little bit about that, recent numbers from the American Trucking Associations, they said the driver shortage is down from a peak of 80,000 in 2021 to 60,000, but largely due to declining demand. So we haven't solved it so much as a poor economy. Balaji, tell us a little bit about that, because driver turnover and retaining talent seems to be one of these challenges that may bite you in the rear if you're not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think this is really a driver turnover issue in the industry, where drivers are constantly switching companies to chase revenue miles and chase dollars. And you're absolutely right. There are a few weeks of really bad loads and bad assignments that actually turns the driver off and wants to go look for something else. Now, drivers have been somewhat patient, and some of these numbers that you're seeing going down is less a function of the driver mindset and more a function of the market. There's only so much freight going around. People are happy to have their jobs and keep rolling and keep loaded and moving. But the whole idea is that this industry really needs to actually start using technology to make sure that the driver related issues are being taken care of. Right? Get the drivers the right miles, get them the right assignments, make sure that they are going home, and being able to do so while every company wants to actually do this the right way, that is not a problem that can be solved manually, right? I mean, even with the best people working and doing the very best, it's a little bit like playing chess. I mean, you're only as good as your game is, and sometimes bringing in a chess engine that tells you what's the next best move to make actually goes a very long way in kind of helping the drivers get the right miles and start to take a real crack at this problem of driver turnover. So we actually do think that as much as fleets want technology to improve their fleet utilization, it is the same solution that's also going to make drivers happy and start to improve on this driver turnover issue.
It reminds me of a recent fact. ATRI, which is like the research arm of ATA, they had their top 10 industry concerns for this year. The first year, and the combined top 10, including drivers and carriers, where driver retention did not make the list. And so I wanted to give a follow-on on that, Balaji, before we get to Travis, is that if you're not, and it looks illustrated, larger fleets for this data set, if you're not worrying about retention and you're not prepared for the uptick, is that something as well? Because I think that we should have recent numbers talking about driver availability and truckload conditions remains easy to find drivers. Is that one of the challenges where that you may buy technology to help in some aspects, but then you're neglecting that human one? I just wanted to get additional thoughts on what happens if you just don't pay attention.
Well, if you don't pay attention, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, there's a human sitting in the seat driving the truck, and there is a chance that all the best technology in the world can still not get you the kind of fleet utilization you're looking for. So part of this calculus for us is to make sure that companies are using technology as an enabler. It is not the only solution in the mix. You actually need to. It's a little bit like, just to use analogies, a new kitchen appliance in your kitchen. So it actually starts to make your cooking easier. But you still need to follow the recipe. You still need to take care of the people. There are still processes around booking the right freight and doing the right assignments and not letting the tribal knowledge and all those things interfere in the way you do your planning. So the way we look at this thing is to use the technology, but use it as a force multiplier to take care of your drivers and to kind of still retain that human element that's required to make sure that you're treating people all over your operations the right way. Right, that change management is a big piece of adopting new technology while at the same time maintaining and improving your competitiveness in the industry. Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great concept. I'd probably just add that, I think this kind of multifaceted approach around driver retention, making sure you're leveraging the technology, but there is a heavy human element. We've seen organizations that have great cultural attitudes and philosophies around treating drivers. And when you couple that with a solution like Hoptek's, I think you're in a pretty good position to kind of drive that down. We'll never see it probably go to zero, and there's no silver bullet, but I think it's probably one of the set of tools that you need to have in the arsenal to deal with this type of issue.
Well, let's talk about application. Travis, you own a fleet, Xtreme Trucking, working on using this technology and application. This dispatch engine is cool because I remember I've had some where you have TMSs and it helps out. And then when I went to AI Fleet, a trucking tech startup, there was no. You had to use your cell phone when we first started and an Excel sheet. Now, they had technologies for load routing, but your day-to-day, talk about how you guys integrated that in, because I think there's something really cool talking about matching the available freight and the opportunities, and then how to make sure your trucks aren't idle or just returning empty. How did that kind of work out? Was there like a before and after, or how did you all implement that stuff?
Yeah, as far as implementing, it's always tough when you first bring this technology on and to get your operations team to buy into it. But once they started seeing the value in, right now we have Hoptek, it basically APIs to McLeod, and all of our orders and all of our hours of service, driver availability, plans, home time is flowing into Hoptek. So what we've seen is we've been able to use the Hoptek. I know it's not a planning board. I call it the planning board because I look at the Hoptek board and it's telling me where trucks are dwelling. Where is there an issue on getting a driver home before our planners or driver managers might even see it, because it's several pre-plans down the list. And the nice thing with using a dispatch engine like this is it is constantly pulling in the data. We all leave at 4 or 5 o'clock, and then there's an after hours second shift, and they don't always understand our operation or our customers' needs like the day shift in our customer service group and our leads. So what Hoptek is doing is it is pulling in that hours of service and driver information 24/7 and constantly optimizing it. So a lot of times it's going to see an issue before we even see it. We've in the beginning, the planners and the people always think there's no way that the technology can do it any better than they can because they've been working with the same customers, and a lot of our routes are pretty static. We do the same thing frequently, but what we have found, the more of the recommendations that we accept through Hoptek, the higher our revenue per hour and or revenue per truck go as we buy into the system. And it's just showing them. And Hoptek really does a really nice job of, we need to show them how and why with the data. And once they see it, they start believing in it and they actually start using it more. I mean, we still got a ways to go to continue to push our organization forward, but we've seen the improvements day and night with just the projections that we have been doing so far.
And I think that's fun because especially the pre-plan component, I used to be a load planner, and we'd always, and when I managed fleets as well, you didn't always catch it. So you may have checked your fleet in the morning, you saw your pre-plans, but then at 5 p.m. you may have given it a glance. There's not really a good way, and that reminds me of the variant program where we had it would be in the background adjusting pre-plans. And so I think that for the Hoptek platform, and I do have a question on this, is do you usually show the drivers the first pre-plan, or do they see all pre-plans on them? I always wondered if there was an art in terms of how much should you show them, because the smart play would be, I want to be checking it all in the back end, but also don't want to send them like reassignment notifications.
That's exactly right. You don't want to show them all the pre-plan, right? You want the planners to kind of give the drivers visibility to what they need to do next, but ensure that as the network keeps changing and there's a dynamic nature to the whole thing, maybe the future pre-plans will change. And that's the whole value of having a real-time dynamic system that's letting you make the most optimal plan within the planning window while letting the network evolve to whatever state it's going to get to, so that you can continue to make the decisions in the future optimally as well. We think that planning out really far out into the future actually constrains the network, and there is value in kind of trying to find that golden interval where it's not too far out in the future and it's not too close to now, in a way that you sort of keep your network moving. I mean, Travis, how do you do this in Xtreme?
Yeah, so this is one area where Hoptek, Balaji, Sean, we have disagreed a little bit, because as a former driver and dealing with drivers, if I can lay out the whole week for that driver, there is a retention piece to that, because they can predict, hey, their kid, their wife, I should be home on Friday at noon because I see all my plans. On the flip side, it seems like that is a never winning battle, because trucking happens. Someone gets delayed. There's high winds in the Midwest today. And, I took a call from a driver that's behind. That does affect the pre-plans on that driver, and we have to re-optimize it. And it seems like whatever way you go, sometimes you can get in trouble and someone's not happy with it, but I prefer to plan out further. Hoptek does plan. They prefer to, a couple days out, 1 to 2 days, so the engine's always working. We've just kind of taken a little more manual approach to that right now. Like, hey, we're going to let it plan out, and they have opened the windows for us. One great thing with Hoptek is they are very customizable. It's not one size shoe fits all. They've really adapted to our needs, because my 120 truck fleet is different than a 500 truck fleet or a 60 truck fleet, but there's applications for this technology in all size fleets, and having a provider that adapts to the different thought process on how dispatches should be planned or pre-planned and how to best optimize. And we've kind of gone back and forth on that, trying to find the best fit that focuses on retention, but also focuses on the best efficiency, and just trying to find a happy medium there is what we have been trying to do since integrating the technology.
And no, that's the $1 trillion question right there. You can get 5 load planners together and ask them that same question. You're going to get different answers, because I've been burned both ways. I've planned a truck 5 deep, and then something comes off and they get mad. Or I plan them 1 deep and I'm adjusting, and then they're saying, well, what am I going to do next, boss? I don't understand. Sean, let's dive in. Let me get your thoughts as well on this, because I feel like art to science, is there among folks that Hoptek is working on, is there kind of a specific way that they're utilizing this software? Is it kind of one thing where I want to plan them all out? Or let's get some of your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, Balaji's definitely the expert here on this, but I think that it's definitely a collaborative effort. I think that for, companies like Travis and others out there, I think there is probably a difference of opinion in terms of their philosophy and how they run their business, understanding the nuances. I probably couldn't pinpoint one in particular, but I'd probably say that there's no one size that fits all, as Travis said, and there's many different flavors, and we're proud of the fact that we're able to configure many different ways to not be one size fits all.
And I want to get Travis's thoughts as well. Let's see what the results are. I think that's a really big thing. Day-to-day value, since you've improved it, some of the KPIs that we're seeing changed. Let's talk about that. And I like that you mentioned earlier, I'm given a leading question, revenue per hour versus rate per mile and revenue per truck, because I'm starting to hear that more. And when I first started, it was always rate per mile or revenue per truck per week. Talk about some of the impacts of this. What are some of the impacts of switching to this in software?
Yeah, so this was a new thought process as we moved on with when we integrated Hoptek, and I know Balaji and I have talked about this because I always tell them when people ask me, what is it doing for you? And if I got to talk in revenue per hour, it's not an industry norm. So we always look at revenue per truck, miles per truck, utilization, total revenue per mile, that type of stuff. But as he showed me how the dispatch engine is optimizing, it started making sense because you can, there's just so many facets. Some people compare revenue per mile. I got $4 a mile, but I went 100 miles for the week. Well, it sounds good from a revenue per mile, but you really didn't make any revenue. So it's how do you look at all of them KPIs together? And what we have seen so far being on the program and utilizing the technology is we look every week, what recommendations are our planners accepting, and how does revenue per hour and revenue per truck and miles per truck follow that number? And what we're seeing is it is indeed following. When we can dispatch a truck that Hoptek may have found with very high dwell, and we re-optimize that truck and put them on something else to get them moving faster or get a better revenue per hour, or maybe he's not sitting on it over the weekend or bringing it to the house. There's all sorts of different angles you can look at on that. But we're seeing the revenue per hour leads the way to the revenue per truck, miles per truck, and pretty much all utilization metrics on that. So
right.
That's been a great thing with Balaji is I want to know numbers, because so many people in the tech space right now, you go to whatever conference, the McLeod conference I was just at, and you walk into that room and you're just like a kid in a candy store, like, ooh, if I had a little bit of all this, everything would just be great. And that's really not how it works. I mean, you got to understand the technology, you got to use it, but then what are the KPIs to show that it's actually improving? Because you talk to a lot of other fleets and they're like, yeah, we put this in, but I think it's doing a little better. And one thing I've done with Balaji and Sean is like, hey, we need a data set, because I like seeing the data. Is it actually improving? Does it? Yeah. I don't want it just to feel like it's improving. And that's how we get our people to buy in. When they see the numbers improving, they're like, oh, guess I can't argue that. I accepted 80% of all the recommendations. Revenue per truck is here. And this week, so-and-so was out of the office, so I was busy and I reverted back to the way I always planned. We accepted 50% and everything fell to here. So we've been able to really show that data and get the buy-in that we need. That sometimes is difficult when we're trying to put in this technology.
I want to get Balaji's thoughts as well, because I think that's such a radical thing here, is that when you switch to a revenue per hour model, it really does change the way that you look at a load. A load fundamentally, length of haul characteristics, rate per mile, all in rate, when you look at that revenue per hour. Is that one of the challenges, Balaji, when you're looking at that, changing the very fundamentals of planning? I wanted to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, the one resource that fleets have is driver capacity. Driver time, right? So most of the full truckloads have 70 hours of a driver's time in a week. How best are you using it? So what we are doing in Hoptek is not just notionally planning based on proximity to a truck and so on, but we're actually doing a HOS based movement calculation, taking into account actual traffic on the road, taking into account the truck routes, taking into account the loading and unloading times. So it really is a fairly precise estimation of how a driver's time and capacity in a week is being used, and that's what we are optimizing, right? So fundamentally, what you're doing is you're saying, in the amount of time the driver is being productive, how much time is spent on earning revenues, how much is on dwelling, repositioning, and HOS hours, and so on. So just optimizing that naturally leads to maximizing revenue miles, and minimizing non-productive hours. But the challenge has always been it's hard to measure, right? So until there is a solution like Hoptek that's actually tracking to how a driver's time is being used and keeps updating it, most fleets don't exactly know when a driver is starting, when a driver is ending, how much time was spent on a load. And so this revenue per hour, while on paper seems like a great unit to solve for, is not necessarily easy to measure and solve for until you actually have something like Hoptek in the mix. Therefore, when Travis is looking at this and saying, this actually does make sense, and solving for revenue per hour does translate into all the conventional metrics that most of the fleets are always looking to solve for, right? So, and we also think that, because we are looking at driver's time all the time, the driver has to go home on time, as much as, is if the driver has a home time coming, making sure that they don't go too far away and they are able to keep their home times, keep their appointments at home. All of that becomes a very, very important piece of the puzzle. So it actually takes away a lot of the decisioning from the planners in a way that they can actually rely on a system that's kind of doing a lot of this grunt work thinking for them, while at the same time keeping track of how to maximize the productive usage of a driver's time.
And
and Thomas, I'd add, sorry, just that, this revenue per hour discussion is one that comes up probably everywhere we go, especially initial discussions with target clients. And I think we constantly land on this idea of, it's not for us, revenue per hour doesn't work for us. But the reality is, the bottom line is, until you have a solution like ours, you really can't consider revenue per hour, because you just you didn't have the data pipes or the data availability to kind of make that judgment and reach that metric.
Yeah, no, so I think that it does. When I saw the transition to revenue per hour from my last startup, that was the biggest conversation with Mark Corey, was that we'd look at loads and be like, Mark, this load looks great. And he'd show me the data. He's like, no, look at the revenue per hour. If you're looking at a software, because I got one more topic here, then we'll start finishing things up. I appreciate y'all gentlemen for staying on a little bit longer. We're moving it further out so we can chop off the front end where we had some issues, make the recording look nice. But let's talk about leveling the playing field and long-term partnerships, because I think that's something really important. What your technology is doing is very radically different than what other offerings are, at least from my personal experience. We'll start with Travis, and when we're looking at leveling the playing field, was this something that you have 120 plus truck fleet? Was this stuff available from when you all first started? What's it like being able to have this opportunity? Because typically it seems like this stuff was only available to the largest mega carriers, nationwide carriers, or publicly traded, however you want to call it.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't available when I first started with my first truck 16 years ago. I remember then we weren't in the phone booths yet, but we were more Excel sheets or some sort of online SaaS system. But there's definitely not optimizers. I think even back then, even the large fleets, I believe Schneider has their own in-house optimizer tool. I don't know when that was built, but with partners like Hoptek coming into the marketplace, it really does help the mid-size fleets be able to play the same game. And when we've been in this downturn for 27 months, give or take, but I think one thing we have to do is we have to embrace the technology. I know there's some fleets like, this is just fly by the night. It's a fad. It's not going to stick, but there are some really good solutions out there. And I think you need to look at what's the ROI in them and what's the future, because hiring planners is primarily, besides a driver or mechanic, is one of the most difficult positions to hire, because it takes that analytical, fast-paced thinking that some people just don't want to have to rebuild the puzzle every single day, multiple times. So it's given us the opportunity to, how do we be more efficient for our customers? Because our customers want things more efficient. And that's what I try to explain to our people in the office all the time. This technology is not to replace anybody. It's how do we make your job easier, and how are we able to do more with less? Because we can put more trucks on per non-driver employee when we utilize technology like this. So that's been kind of like what our focus is. I think in the next 5 years, you're going to really see the technology. Now that there's machine learning and AI, I know everybody calls it a different thing, but I think you have to use it to be able to compete going forward within this industry, whether you're an asset-based carrier or brokerage. The technology is here and it's getting smarter. And I know at the conference I saw, just like big screen TVs, it's coming into the market, but it'll be more viable for, the 50 truck fleet, the 30 truck fleet, the 20 truck fleet. There's going to be different options that come out to make it available. And I believe you have to adapt and start integrating some of this into your company now, or get left behind on some of the technology that's coming out.
And final thoughts, Balaji, then we'll go over towards Sean as well, and then we'll get where to reach out and learn more.
I mean, just adding to what Travis is saying, this technology is here to stay. I think this is a new wave of technology that's coming in that's going to make fleets all very, very productive. I mean, to some extent, the technology that exists in the trucking industry is also very legacy, right? Very old technology. And one of the best things that we heard a customer tell us was when he saw our demo and our solution, he said, I can finally tell my kids that they can become part of the trucking industry. That's a big deal because everyone is using, technology in their hands. But when they come to work, that technology is stale and doesn't look like anything that they see anywhere else in their lives. This is a need of the hour. It's not only about fleet utilization. It is also about moving the needle in the industry on adopting new technology so that you can attract the right workforce, you can attract the right drivers, and kind of go through this cycle that the trucking industry sorely needs to get into, because otherwise the workforce is aging pretty quickly. All said and done, this doesn't have to be done as a cost. It can be done as a productivity opportunity and really improve the value in the industry. So it's here to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably, Thomas, sorry, I know you're going to hand it over to me now, but I'd probably just say that I'm going to be preemptive there and say that I like Travis's comment just around, helping people within your planning division and the organization to be more efficient. I think what it does also for a lot of people, it keeps their job interesting because they're going to be elevated to a level of kind of dealing with exceptions rather than dealing with routine tasks. And that also drives down, waste, inefficiency, and errors and a whole bunch of other things. But I think if the technology, to Balaji's point, I think is here to stay. I think it's going to become, as Travis said, probably a more available mainstream as time goes on for everybody to take advantage of. But I think it's really going to elevate a lot of our game, and the data is already readily available. But few can offer an HOS-based opportunity to kind of maximize the efficiency of your fleet, drive up utilization, and really improve your OR and profitability. So we're happy about that. And I think, again, I'm going to be preemptive and say that if you want to reach out and learn more about Hoptek, we're at hoptek.ai. We also have some people on our team that you're more than happy to reach out to. Patrick Hardy is on our team here and is more than happy to book you guys a demo if anybody's interested. But thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you all so much. Travis, folks want to learn about extreme trucking as well or check out at a conference. Best way to find out?
Yeah, you can find us online, extremetrucking.com. Whether you're a customer or driver, we've continued to grow throughout the Midwest, and we are a refrigerated fleet. So appreciate the time today.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, so much. Really appreciate y'all coming on and working with us. This will be one of our longest episodes ever and one of our first episodes with the 4-box. So really appreciate y'all coming on. We're going to have to wrap up this show, though, and if you are just joining us here, we're going to be on demand on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. If you like what you're doing, we have also the Loaded and Rolling newsletter, which comes out on Thursdays at 2 p.m. That's a wrap for today's show, but join us next week. We'll do it live.